from self-discovery to unapologetic passion, from inner strength to outward influence. It's Your Turn charts the journey of empowerment. Welcome to our series, where the book comes to life. In each episode, we explore a chapter's wisdom through real stories. We uncover the strategies that turn potential into power. And we witness how one woman's journey can inspire countless others. Prepare to see yourself in these pages and voices. Because with every story, we're reminded, it's your turn to write the next chapter.
Welcome back. I am delighted to welcome Yvonne Silver, a true confidence catalyst and the dynamic CEO of Women in Wisdom Media. Yvonne's mission is clear and inspiring: to help women entrepreneurs flourish in their personal and professional lives. With an impressive career spanning 3 decades, Yvonne brings a wealth of experience to the table. Her journey includes launching 8 startups and working across 4 countries, experiences that have honed her entrepreneurial acumen and nurtured her social enterprise spirit. This unique combination of business savvy and holistic approach is further enhanced by her Reiki training, offering a truly comprehensive perspective on success and personal growth. Yvonne's expertise as a speaker, best-selling author, and coach and mentor is widely recognized, particularly in the realms of confident conversations and increasing sales velocity. For the past 4 years, Yvonne has been inspiring audiences through her Women in Wisdom radio show on BBS Radio, where she interviews entrepreneurs and celebrities, exploring their journeys of resilience. Her influence extends beyond radio, as she has been featured on television and numerous podcasts. As a Woman of Inspiration alumni member, Yvonne continues to break new grounds and inspire others. Her unique blend of business acumen, spiritual awareness, and dedication to empowering women makes her a standout figure in the worlds of entrepreneurship and personal development. So you understand why I'm excited to delve into Yvonne's insights and experiences, exploring how she has navigated her own journey. Her story is not just about personal achievement, but about lifting others as she rises, a true embodiment of women supporting women in the business world and beyond. So welcome to this book interview episode, Yvonne. It's a real pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for the kind invitation, and what a great project. I'm so glad that you are taking this forward to help everybody evolve. So great work. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a mission, and I know that we have similar missions. Empowering women is a very important thing. I absolutely think that it's not only our turn, it's also our time to bring in the feminine power and energy and spirits and help to create a better world. And that is absolutely what I want to do with the book. And that is absolutely what I want to do with everything that I do. And I'm pretty sure that it's the same for you. And I'm so happy to have you here for your story, because if we delve into chapter 3 of the book, which is about pursuing our passions unapologetically, then your insights are in particular valuable because your expertise in confident conversations and your commitment to helping women find their voice align perfectly with the themes I want to explore with you here. So the first question is, you have turned your personal story into a passion for helping women to have more powerful conversations. What principles do you find most effective for leading with your values and vision in a conversation? Because I see a lot of women not speaking their truth.
Certainly to make the time, it is an investment of time to know your own values first. My sort of top 4 are creativity, transformation, joy, and connection. So when I make all of my decisions grounded in those 4 key values, decisions come quickly. I don't spend time wasted doodling on things for hours. It's very clear, very evident. This either aligns or it doesn't align. So yes, I work primarily with women entrepreneurs, some also with some leaders. If we liken this intention back to working in the corporate arena, corporate companies have values, they have mission statements, and those are the things that we can, as team members, ground back to. And if leaders are not themselves aligned and living into the values, that very quickly ripples across the organization. So in the work that I do, it's really important that we dive in and look at what are your core values? How are you going to live into those values? Because that then becomes the flavor, the core flavor of everything that you do and how you show up in the world. So I think it's really important that we find out what our values are, and there's a variety of tools out there to help us do that.
Yeah, absolutely. In the book, I'm also referring to basically the work that you can do to become more aware of your values, see how they show up, understand also when you feel like depleted or frustrated or any other situation that you feel that you're not moving, to analyze how this is related with your values being disconnected from your values, or your values not being respected. So this is absolutely a very important exercise, because to me, I don't know about you, but to me, my values are my inner compass. They're giving direction. They're allowing me, and like you say, to make choices, to make decisions, and also to speak your truth. And yet, if you have your values, still some women think it's very difficult to stand up and to speak that truth, even if they know what they're standing for, to make it explicit, to go sometimes into the confrontation. How do you deal with that? What is your view on that, Yvonne?
I believe that we don't have to be liked by everybody, but we do have to be respected. Respect is one of those things that you have to earn, right? So depending on what relationship dynamic we're referring to, if we're talking about in business, in the work arena, in business conversations, we can demonstrate that we are trustworthy in some very simple ways very quickly. Respect in the conversation starts by showing up early, showing up ready, having your questions, having your focus, but also being fully respectful of the person's time. So you're giving them your full attention. You're not allowing other distractions or interruptions to come in. You're sitting with them, and you're not trying to shape the conversation. You are literally being open in creativity. And I know that there's a couple of questions I looked ahead at what we might be covering today. And the concept of appreciative inquiry is going to be a common thread in our conversation, because I use that all the time. Instead of starting with, tell me about your greatest challenge, which is very often what makes people shrink back, and you can see them deflate, their energy literally shrinks. Oh, I got to talk about that thing that I made a decision on and it didn't work out. Why start there in a conversation? Give the person a chance to shine and step into their brilliance. What's working really well? And start with appreciating what is, and then inquiring into how could it be even better.
That's beautiful. Another thing that, of course, and you're a coach, so you know that and you do that, is listening skills, active listening, because we can learn to speak our truth, we can learn to show up, but it doesn't mean that we have to come in, be it in a professional or a personal context, that we have to come in like a bulldozer. It's not because we can show up unapologetically that we are not open to what other people bring. So in terms of listening skills, and I guess when we're talking about appreciative inquiry, we have that also as one of the elements there. What is it that makes you a good listener?
Coming with the genuine intention of listening versus trying to shape and manipulate a conversation, I think is key. Certainly as entrepreneurs, we hear a lot about marketing and sales and dealing with objections. I don't get objections because I don't set myself up in that way, because I'm inquiring using that appreciative inquiry context. And so when we start a conversation with, I'm curious, can you share a little about?
Yeah.
When you're coming from a place of curiosity, and again, back to my Reiki training, it has a whole different energy of engagement, of invitation for them to share a little bit about them first. So instead of telling, the power is in the asking. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, right? Because we're not supposed to be doing all the talking all the time.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be listening first to understand. Thank you, Stephen Covey, for that principle. So how, why, who, what if. I very rarely use why when I'm first getting to know somebody, which perhaps goes against some of the great transformational leaders' principles. Oh, Simon Sinek, golden circle, you need to know why. because again, it gets people's backs up if you ask too early, why did you do this? Especially when you have why and you in the same sentence. Coming from that place of curiosity, building trust with that I'm curious statement works really well.
Yeah. So what about being open and being transparent? When you try to build that connection that you were talking about already, when you try to build that connection, do you believe that sharing like relevant personal experiences can be helpful in order to include people in a project, in a story, in a goal?
I think we can, with awareness of how to do it, so that you're not, oh, listen to me, and you're all puffed up. I'm blah, 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 right? When it's used as a context to set the conversation that, yes, I understand where you're coming from. May I share a little bit about something that relates, I believe, to this conversation? So when you're asking for permission to then share your story, it's a different energy than, let me tell you about myself, right? So the context, yes, very important to share the personal story. The depth of your questions can showcase your wisdom without you telling people, I have a PhD. The fact that you're even asking that deep of a question will showcase that you must understand these fundamental lower level things. Otherwise, you wouldn't be asking that deep of a question. So we can showcase who we are by not necessarily it feeling like bragging, although that word brag, I actually reframed that in a recent workshop for some mentorship workshop for women, Business Professional Women's Club. So if we assume that the word brag, which very often has a negative connotation, can be reshaped, let's use it to say B for brains, R for resilience, A for action, and G for goals. And all we're doing then is we're stating, here's how I used my knowledge and my intelligence to create something that had a clear result. Here was my action plan. Here's what we achieved at the end. And if you can wrap measurable ROI around it, percentage increase, percentage revenue, percentage of something that shifted, you're not actually tooting your own horn unnecessarily. You're simply stating with clarity what you did and how you did it.
Yeah. You're an expert in confident conversations. And what I see is, especially if women don't feel confident yet, if they don't have the habit of showing up, of raising their voice, sometimes they can go, okay, let's follow this. I have my values. I use them as my inner compass. I know what I'm talking about and why I'm talking about these things. I know why it's so important for me. I develop listening skills, and then I speak my truth. And sometimes this truth sounds like accusations. You already mentioned a little bit. It is about don't ask too much whys, be careful with the sequence where you're asking specific questions. So what are strategies for women that are new in this area in terms of where they say, okay, I want to make that next step. I want to be able to speak up in a meeting. I want to organize something where I'll try to get people on the same line on a specific project or on a specific goal. And yet I'm not sure yet what strategies can I use in order to make sure that I don't come over as too much or as criticizing or being focused on the negative. You already mentioned the appreciative inquiry, but I guess that you have also specific strategies that people can learn to integrate, to embody.
Yeah. So again, back to some of those fundamentals, right? Not using the word why too early in the conversation so it doesn't put people on the defensive, grounding into the outcome, right? We're here today to talk about achieving this specific outcome. This is our project. This is our target. This is our strategic goal for this quarter. This is what we're shooting for. So you ground into the outcome that's already been decided by leadership, C-suite, board of directors, whatever group that is. And then it's a case of let's work together to see how we can accomplish that using everybody's best skills and abilities. I know what I can contribute to this project. I'm curious to hear around the table who wants to work on which piece. What can you bring to the table to get this done? So when we invite others in first versus taking charge, you speak first to set the context for the meeting and the outcomes. You hear from everybody else around the table, and then you get to wrap it up with a nice, neat little bow at the end by saying, yeah, I've heard everybody's perspectives. Here's what I believe is the best approach based on engaging and leveraging all of your skills and talents. Let's start with this and put these timelines in place, these milestones, so we know we're keeping on track. And everyone who's brought something forward, as with coaching, when someone creates their own commitment and it's their own idea of how they're going to get something done, they're far more committed to it than if I tell them as the leader, you need to do this, you need to do this. So it's using a coach approach, coming back to the grounded strategic projects, coming back to the values, leveraging each person's commitment and utilizing their skills to actually work on a team project, to use the power of the team to get things done.
Yeah. And then you are prepared. We are following all these steps. We are in the meeting, and then we get into our emotions because we're so enthusiastic about what we can achieve, or because somebody says something and it's like going against what you're standing for. And so you become emotional. So what is it that you advise if you feel these emotions coming up? Because the conversation and certainly the energy goes in a different dimension. You go on a different vibration, and sometimes we tend to lose it a little bit, and we tend to lose out of sight the goal and the fact that everybody is included. And because we are in this vibration of whatever, it could be very enthusiasm, but it could also be frustration or some anger or sadness. So what is your advice in order to take that back into a presence where, because I hear the way you are saying things is very present and very serene, and it's, you really create this flow where people can flow on, but that's not always the case. And so for me, it's very important also when I work with clients, with women, in order to, how do we trigger that, and how do we make sure it doesn't play an important or especially a not that positive role in our conversations or in our meetings?
So I'm a big believer in setting the tone before you even get into the meeting. So if you've ever looked at the work of Amy Cuddy, there's a great TED talk on YouTube, and it talks about going into the bathroom before a meeting and literally standing in your Wonder Woman pose to shift your cortisol level, so that if you do that for 2 minutes and you're standing literally in your power stance, when you go into the meeting, first of all, you've set your energy up in a different way, so you feel more confident to begin with. I'm a great believer in having a glass of water with me all the time. When we have to think about something, just taking a sip of water, it's a very natural thing to do. Nobody's going,
It's like
what's
a
she doing?
pause.
It's creating a natural pause. The other thing is using power pauses. So we actually create 3 statements. When we're in a great mood, when we're not stressed, we're not about to go into the meeting, create 3 power pause statements that could be as simple as, that's an interesting point. I can hear this is something that connects very deeply to your values. I'd like to give it more thought. Can we come back to that? Can we book a separate meeting? And we could do that tomorrow or next week. So you create the sentence of how you're going to create the power pause for yourself, so that you can diffuse that emotion, that you don't have to step into it right away. But if you don't have that language prepared in the moment, you're stressed, all your blood is rushing to your frontal cortex, you're not necessarily going to be able to think of what to say next. So having it done ahead of time, creating 3 power pause statements is really powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. So what about negotiating? What about finding solutions that have a common ground? I'm not talking about compromises, but in terms of finding solutions, in terms of finding alternatives, in terms of keeping things open when you have conversations, when you want to really achieve a project where you want to co-create it with other people and you are in the lead, sometimes you tend to have the solutions, because when you are in the lead, you're considered as a leader. And we have this perception of leaders that leaders need to know all the answers. Leaders have to have all the solutions. And like this, leaders need to know everything. So sometimes we're very driven to find a solution. And that means that we are not open to alternatives, or that we just go for the solution that is evident for us. And so we basically sub-optimize the outcome of our meeting or the outcome of our projects. What is your view on that? And what is your strategy to avoid that?
Mm. First off, my view might be controversial, but I believe when we're thinking about leadership inside organizations, first of all, it's not a typical triangle where the workers are at the bottom and the leader sits at the top of the pyramid. I think that leadership is actually an inversion. So here is the leader who is supporting everybody else in the organization to step into their brilliance and do their best work based on their experience, their values, what relationships they're bringing to the table, their creativity. Otherwise, why do we need them? Right? So leadership is about influencing others to do their best work, not my way or the highway. That's, I think, very archaic leadership. The second thing is we can, and I've seen this happen, all of those startups, those 8 startups you mentioned, some I was on the leadership team for. They weren't my own startup, but working in some very fast-paced, high-growth organizations, I know that the leaders can sometimes push a solution through, and everybody's got to change. Hang on a second, the leader's been thinking about this for months and months or weeks, as fully immersed in the decision that we're going to go in this direction. But everybody else is not on board with that because they haven't been engaged in the conversation. So we can either, and I learned this as my senior HR director role, we can either engage people in building a solution that will be implemented much more readily at the end, or we can try to push something through and get resistance. So why not build a better solution by actually engaging the people who it's going to impact the most, and start there so that we get those early adopters on board. We have that willingness for them to spread the word. Hey, this is a great thing. People do need to know why in that context, right? Why are we making this change? Our clients are telling us this. The external market, we just did a SWOT analysis looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Here's what we need to change internally in order to keep up with what's happening externally. We need to make a change. We must make a change or we're going to be irrelevant. So we know we got to change. How do we do that? Let's engage the people who are going to be on the team creating the solution to bring their ideas to the table. Sometimes it feels like it will take longer to do that, to invite that input, but it takes much less time on the back end to get it adopted versus it being the latest solution, which is just a binder on a shelf and doesn't actually get implemented and adopted.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. When we look at women in the leadership roles and women showing up unapologetically, research shows that we have a different style than men have. And I don't want to put them here into opposites, because what I would love to see is that we find this harmony in activating our feminine leadership qualities and our masculine leadership qualities. I would also like to see that in men, but that's a different story. That's probably a different book that I'm not going to write. What is because sometimes I feel that we have a problem with that. Either we're like really adopting the style that is going in the organization, or that we have seen role modeled by other women or by other men, in terms of we go get it, we are ambitious, we are in this competition, or we're a little bit too much in the other side, where we are extremely inclusive, extremely focused on the connections, on being empathetic, on understanding everybody's side and everybody's thing. And then sometimes things just don't move. So finding this, I would call it balance, or finding this awareness of which elements to use. And that can be like a sequence of elements, and they can vary depending on the situation or on the context or the people that we deal with. How can we learn that? To do that better, to activate basically all the elements in our skill sets in order
Right.
to create these unstoppable momentum in project?
I think there's several things in unpacking that question, Helen. Firstly, when we know our own values and we've got that context, we can choose how we leverage the skills that we have and be aware of the things that are not our strong skills. So that's where we're drawing on the whole team so that I can work in my brilliance, somebody else can work in their brilliance, etc. That's why we have teams. But also being aware of situational leadership. What does this situation require, right? And there's books and context on that topic. What does this situation need right now? Does it need me to stand in my strength as the leader and say, I've decided, or the best solution is, in order to be in alignment with the company values, or in order to keep this project on track, here's what I believe needs to shift. However, we're a team. I want to hear your input as well. So when we have those values as our starting point, it just makes it so much easier to connect to what's happening around us and what's coming towards us versus trying to push water uphill. And that takes, I believe, a depth of doing a lot of your own inner work, getting really clear on your values, realizing that, yeah, these are my strengths, these are not. So I'm going to choose to stay in my strength.
I think it's also very important to establish trust so people are aware of what is expected from them, at least what is expected to be the outcome of the meeting or the project or whatever. And so if you can include that this is building the trust that you need in order to have people going the extra mile or coming out of their comfort zone or whatever is needed to make this project move or to make it happen. Because when everybody is staying in a comfort zone because this is where they want to be, because they're not sure, they're confused or they're scared, that's not really where we want to have people. This is not really how we get things done. This is not really how we change the world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. As a leader, we'll have a task that we want to get done. We can either push it on people and say that this is what we need to do, this is how you need to do it, and set all the parameters up so tightly that they feel confined and they really don't feel that they're actually being valued. Or we can create the container and say, here's what we need to do by this date. Tell me, what are your first couple of steps in order to get this project rolling? And they can then step into their brilliance. They'll own it. They'll feel empowered. You don't then become the bottleneck as the leader because you haven't put tight constraints around it and you have given them some control. So they're more likely to come back to you and not feel stupid saying, I don't understand this. If you haven't asked them, what are your first couple of steps, then you really don't have an idea if they have any understanding of what's really essential. Their first two steps they share will tell you whether they get it or not, or if they're completely going down another path or a rabbit hole that does not relate to the project. And then you can rein them in at the beginning versus letting them get out on a noose and hang themselves and then wondering why they've missed the timeline, right?
Yeah.
Or having the person sitting there in discomfort, not knowing where to start, but not feeling comfortable saying, I don't know where to start, because you're giving them that opportunity at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what about you? Because we have been talking now about strategies on how to set everything up in order to speak your truth, to speak unapologetically. You've been in numerous startups, you wrote a book, you have a radio show, you were on podcasts, you were on television. So you show up, I guess I can say, you show up unapologetically. How has this been for you as a process? Have you always been like that? Or have you gone through like a transformation yourself? Is that something that you would share with us?
No, I wasn't always like this. I grew up in London, England. You can hear from my accent. I'm not born in Canada, where I live now. My dad came back from World War II. He had a bullet in Dunkirk, and he came back with PTSD. He was one of the hundreds of thousands of men who didn't get treated. And he showed up as a very angry man. Growing up, what I saw was my mom, who was a professional woman with her own income, working mom, came into the marriage, became a stay-at-home mom, and literally he drained the dignity and her power right out of her. She didn't have her own income. She taught him how to drive the car, and he took the car keys and wouldn't let her drive the car. And she literally became this shell of the person she once was, and she lost her voice. That's what I saw growing up. So I vowed I was not going to be that person. And I was in my strength and confidence until I hit 11 when I missed an important exam by 2 marks. And he screamed at me as we opened the results, "You will never, ever be successful in life," and stormed out. And that shook me as I was going into high school. And I ended up losing my voice too. And so years later, of stepping purposely into roles that had communication, working in many different roles, they all had a common thread of clear communication. So sales, hiring and training sales reps was one of my first jobs. Then the human resources element, interviewing and hiring about 6,000 people in my career, moving from a very early position in recruiting up to HR director and then to VP of global talent management firm. And then coaching in the last 15 years, all of those experiences have helped me strengthen my voice. And then as my career advanced, I wanted to write a book. And I thought about what is it that I do the best? And if I think about my education, I got English Lit. That was my best mark in high school, a 92. And then my coaching work was a 6-month-long investment in Royal Road's coaching designation. It's like a PhD level course. And I came out with a 4.0. Who does that, right? I looked at those two things as center points for what am I going to write and the power of language and what my mum experienced. And I realized that women need more tools to be able to speak up and ask for what they want and get it. Not by being aggressive and trying to be like, doing it like a man, but being clear, being articulate, owning their value, understanding how to present themselves in a way that is fact specific and ties into the organizational goals or to their own goals if they're an entrepreneur and what their clients are looking for, and have that clarity so that they can speak from the heart and really step into owning who they are. So it's been a journey, and the last 6 months, even more, I'm passionate and so glad to do this interview now, is I chose to, when I had a health issue last year, I had 2 weeks of healing. And during that time, it became evident that I needed to make some changes in my life. And one of them was to step away from being in a toxic relationship. So I chose to not tolerate poor behavior anymore in my life. And I stepped away. So now I'm even more passionate about asking this question of other women: what are you tolerating? Because when we don't speak up, people assume everything is fine. So that's been a new layer this year to really step into my own power, my own sovereignty.
Well, kudos for you. We can have a lot of things. We can have a lot of ducks in a row. We can have our ideas and our vision. And there are sometimes areas in our life where it's not like that. And because we have everything covered in other areas, people look at us and they say, everything's going fine there. And actually it's not. Some elements are really draining our energy and also our focus. And so when you say that you make a clean ship in every area of your life, I think that's extremely powerful. That's extremely powerful. And I know that will resonate to many women in terms of, yeah, I can do that too. Mm-hmm. I can do that too. Because my professional life is extremely successful. But when I look at my relationship, or when I look at my friendships, or when I look at my relationship with my parents, it's toxic. And there I don't speak up. Or vice versa. I'm a very empowering mother. And I'm the coach of the girls' football club in my town. And yet when I'm in a meeting, I'm in this very masculine environment. I just shut down. I don't do anything. And so being able to use what we've learned in certain areas of our life and apply it in others can be extremely hard, but can be so strong. And we can do this. We can really do this. And if we cannot do it on our own, there's people like you, there's people like me, but there's always people that have your back. And that's extremely important to make sure that we show up in every aspect of our life.
True, very true. And I believe as well, when we look at the word failure or mistake as a word that needs reframing, that
Mm.
we get presented in life with learning opportunities. It's a lesson, right? And we learn just as much from the things that don't go as well. So out of those 8 startups, 2 of them were my own, and they were not successful.
Mm.
And there are a lot of learnings that are equally as valuable that come from those things. And if we look at that and say, we're not actually doing anything wrong, we're simply getting a redirect from the universe if it's not working. And if we can stay open and curious to say, instead of going down a rabbit hole and getting all upset about it, let's just explore and stay in observation.
I like that. It's a little bit anecdotic, but there's research proving it also that when we are confronted with failure as women, we just take it on ourselves. When we fail, we feel like we are failure. When men fail, and once again, this is very black and white, but yet you will certainly know stories like that. When men fail, it's about it's the team, it's the economy, it's the politics, it's whatever. And although there might be excuses, at least what they don't do is take that failure and putting it on themselves, like a coat, like I am the failure. Then failure is keeping us from exploring, from experimenting, from even experimenting how to say something. Because when we build our narrative, when we are creating our vision on the world, which we need in order to define our mission, we sometimes are afraid to speak up because we might say something that is not completely right yet, because it has to be perfect before we express it. And when you just try the things, and when you talk with people that have your back, with like-minded women, and you just practice and see, when I say this, how does it land? Or how can I make this more clear? How can I make this more appealing or compelling? Things like that. Just practice instead of waiting until it's perfect before you bring it to the world. We need all the voices. We need this information, but we also can tolerate the imperfections there. And Claire Zammit says, and I love that quote, we can be brilliant and imperfect at the same time and embrace them. Yeah.
Yeah, Brene Brown got extraordinarily well known because of her book, The Gift of Imperfection, right?
Yeah.
If we, as women, if we acknowledge that we are the sex that was gifted the power to give life, so we naturally have that caring, motherly imprint. It's part of our soul, right? We can't listen to our baby crying without it sounding like a radar in our head. We just can't ignore it. That's biology. So if we think about we already have that maternal instinct. When we apply that to leadership, we do have different strengths, and let's leverage those strengths. Let's leverage the fact that we do care about the team. We do care about the long-term impact when there's a change. We're not only thinking short-term about the profits for this quarter, we're actually thinking about the implications, and more likely that we will want to have a social enterprise element to the business. We want to get involved with community relations. We want to do things in the community that are doing good as well as making money. Whereas I believe that there is more short-term objective thinking with our male leaders who are more conscious and sometimes only looking at the bottom line as the indicator for success, whereas there are actually many measures in business for success. And when women look at the leadership capacity that we have of innovating, encouraging, teamwork, all of those things are what make women leaders exceptional. I believe that when I'm working with my clients, part of the reason why they wanted to become owners of their own business to begin with is because they weren't being acknowledged at work and recognized. They weren't being paid fairly, and therefore they want to take back their own power and have a more even playing field. So they want to earn their own wages and not be confined by other people's salary ranges. So they're really stepping into their power and owning their skills, their competencies, and offering that to the world in a different way based on their values, the skills, the solutions, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I also touch in the book, and that is a redefinition of success. Define success on your own terms. And what I would like to add, because what you're saying is so relevant, and this is because as you say, we are giving birth. So we have in our DNA, epigenetically, we have certain elements that are absolutely very strong. And what we also have, and sometimes we tend to forget, is we create life. We are extremely creative. We are extremely powerful. I was talking with Dion Johnson. She is also in one of the interviews, and she has been a midwife. And she said, I have always been so impressed by the power of a woman giving birth. And I know that not all of us are giving birth, and that's not what it is about. It is about that we have this innate strength and that we are not enough aware of that, that we are extremely powerful. Look at women, but also look at animals when their children are threatened, how strong we can be, how forceful we can be, how we have capacity that we are not even aware of. And that only shows up in like extreme situations. And I believe that being able to access those capacities also in normal life without having them explode, but really trust that we have the power, that we can do this, that we are very powerful. And there have been ages where we were respected and validated for that power, and we forgot that. So it is about activating that power again and doing that in community joins. Actually, this is also what this book is about. It's about more than you and me. It's about humanity and what we can do and how creative and powerful we are for that. And so thank you also for bringing that up, for these specific elements that we have that and that we have access to all the time.
Right.
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And as we're talking, yeah, there are some fundamental beliefs that I believe shape how I now show up that are different than who I was 20 years ago. One is the acceptance that there are no mistakes, there are simply redirects in life. If it's not life and death, don't sweat the small stuff. And even in death, our energetic body, it doesn't actually die, it just transmutes into something else. So if we actually don't even fear death, then we have a whole different perspective about trying new things. We can go fast if we go alone, but if we want to go far, we have to go with others. It's much more fun. And that dance of creation, that's what life is, the ability to create and co-create on itself. That's what we're here to do. That's what I believe, right?
Beautiful. Wonderful. Yvonne, it has been a pleasure talking to you. And it has been such a nice evolution in our conversation, going from the more strategic learning about conversations to the essence of being a woman that is speaking up unapologetically, the essence of the woman that you are and the woman that I am, and the woman that we want to support and that we want to see and show up everywhere in this world. So thank you so much for your contribution. Thank you for being you, for doing the work you do. It is very important. And thank you also for supporting this book. Let's hope we can touch the lives of so many women that it is inevitably that we create a better world where children and women no longer suffer the way they are right now in so many countries. So thank you a lot.